Welcome to the Tabletop Empire. My name is Nate, and today we will be covering the skills in Star Wars RPG. This video will help you understand what each of the skills in the game are used for, as well as at the end, I'm going to give you guys a special tip that can turn your players from noobs who treat a tabletop RPG like a video game into actual story-driven role players. So whenever the player wants to take an action that has a reasonable chance at success or failure, they would do what's called a check and roll some dice that are determined by their skills. Skills are mostly anything that a character might learn, which is broken down into a list that you can find on the front of your character sheet. And as you'll see, those skills are broken down into three categories. There are general skills, combat skills, and knowledge skills. Now, general skills and combat skills, these are going to be your skills based on actions that you want to take, things that you want to go do, whereas the knowledge skills are based on what your character knows. And not only what your character knows, but also used for gaining insight into certain situations. Each skill has ranks that can be obtained by spending XP from rank 0 to rank 5. Now we cover everything about what dice to roll based on the skills and their ranks and all of that fun stuff in our dice video, so if you haven't seen that, check it out after this. But the short version is that you get to roll either more or upgraded dice when rolling for that skill. I did cover spending your XP to gain ranks and skills in our character creation videos. However, I did make a mistake in that video, so I'm going to recap with the correct information now. So buying a rank into a career skill is going to be 5 times whatever the rank is that you're buying. So if you're buying rank 1, it's going to be 5, rank 2 is 10, 15, 20, and 25. Non-career skills cost 5 more than that. So it would cost 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. It is not 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 like I initially said previously. And then career skills versus non-career skills, that's going to be determined during character creation. Now I did just reference 2 previous videos, and that's because we are currently in the middle of a ongoing series where we're breaking down the entire cool rulebook from chapter 1 all the way until the end. So if you're new to this channel, I recommend checking out our beginner's guide series. I'll put a card up in the top corner. Now, onto the skills themselves. I'm going to be covering what the skills are used for and then some examples of how they might be used. The book has a little bit more information than that, but right now we're just trying to cover the base core concepts of each skill.
Space, the final frontier.
Astrogation is pretty much space geography. How well do you know the stars and space routes? You use this when using the Navicomputer or checking general knowledge of galactic geography. Athletics is a skill that reflects a character's fitness and overall physical conditioning, so climbing, running, swimming, jumping, and so on are the kinds of checks that use this skill.
Flattery don't charge these batteries, civilian.
Charm is for appealing to one's better nature, with methods such as flattery, flirting, or seduction. Maybe your character is just very charismatic and can use a silver tongue to get his way. Note, something like flattery still needs a grain of truth and sincerity, otherwise that would fall under deception instead.
Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?
Coercion is when a player tries to get their way using fear, threats, and intimidation, with or without being accompanied by physical or hostile actions. This also applies to questioning anyone being held captive. Coercion is an opposed check, so the difficulty would be determined by the opponent's discipline skill. Other factors, such as how they're being coerced, can affect the dice pool as well. For me, this is mostly what affects boost or setback dice, though it's not limited to that.
Hacker Man. He's the most powerful hacker of all time.
Computer is when you use computer to do computer things. Attempting to open a locked door, bypassing security, searching encrypted records, investigating another slicer's actions in a computer system, altering droid programming, recovering data, and the list goes on and on.
Need you cool. Are you cool?
Cool is the player's ability to be emotionally in control and centered, even in stressful situations. It's also used to determine initiative, or turn order in combat, when the player has had the sufficient amount of time to calmly prepare to take action. This is also used to resist charm and negotiation.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Coordination is the player's coordination. It is another one that is kind of self-explanatory, but this may show up when the player's balancing on narrow surfaces, escaping restraints, attempting to reduce fall damage, crawling through tight spaces, etc.
Lies! Deceptions!
Deception is used when trying to deceive another person and is opposed by discipline. Maybe the player is trying to mislead a buyer, lie to a stormtrooper, or maybe distract an opponent through cunning intelligence.
Control your emotions. Discipline your mind.
Discipline is a character's mental willpower and fortitude. It's used to resist leadership, coercion, and deception checks. You also roll discipline sometimes when under stressful situations to be able to keep acting normally, such as if a player was under heavy fire. Cool and discipline can sound very similar in this way, but the key difference is that cool is based on presence, so it's maintaining your external emotions, while discipline is based on willpower, so it's maintaining your internal emotions.
There is one who I could follow.
Leadership is the character's ability to lead and inspire others. Maybe the player wants to sway a crowd to take action, or help snap the party out of fear following a failed fear check. If trying to sway somebody to do something that isn't in their best interest or could put them in danger, then it would also be an opposed check against their discipline.
I'm good at fixing things. Always was.
Mechanics represents a player's ability to repair anything from droids to ships to blasters and so on. This skill can be used to repair equipment that suffered physical damage, identify parts that need repair, which could help gain some accurate information on cost of repairs at a shop, or maybe the player could find some parts and wants to construct something out of them. At the GM's discretion though, a task might be impossible due to the lack of certain tools or components. Throughout the game, the player will probably sustain injuries. Medicine checks are used to treat and heal injuries. Use this skill when using med packs, treating poison, healing critical injuries, and performing surgeries and other similar actions. If your wounds are at half the threshold or below, the medical check will be easy. If it's above half of your threshold, then it's an average check, and if it's above your threshold, then it'll be a hard check. The difficulty of healing critical injuries are based on the injury's severity rating, which you can find on the critical injury table.
You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
Negotiation is the skill of negotiating. The happy middle ground where both parties can agree and benefit. Negotiation is used whenever the player wants to buy or sell something, or when trying to come up with an agreement between two parties. This will usually be opposed with the other character's cool or negotiation. Perception is the character's active perception. How well are you able to find what you're looking for? How well do your senses tell you what you want to know, not just sight? Some species will even have more than the regular 5 senses, which can be taken into account. Maybe the player is looking for loot or traps in the room. Maybe the player is trying to observe an unaware target from a distance, or when trying to notice subtle clues in overheard conversation or the smell of a Jawa or drug in their beverage.
Flying is for droids.
Piloting is split into planetary and space piloting. Pretty much, are you flying in space or within the planet's atmosphere? Speeder bikes and other planetary craft would use the planetary piloting skill as well. These skills are also used when flying a ship. Maybe the check might be harder because you're unfamiliar with the ship's controls. Maybe you're being chased and need to evade the enemy or incoming fire.
Storm's coming up, Annie. You better get home quick.
Resilience is your character's physical ability to carry on even in difficult situations. Maybe the player hasn't had rest in a full day, or maybe they're in the middle of a sandstorm, or maybe they're just famished and dehydrated.
Like being an outlaw when you got responsibilities.
Skullduggery encompasses a large and broad range of skills that kind of fall into the mischievous category. So if you're trying to pick locks or pickpocketing, if you're trying to break into a secure facility or escape a prison cell, and so on and so forth.
Oh, stealth mode.
Stealth is for the sneaky, hiding from an opponent's senses, following someone without being detected, or hiding yourself or others from attention through methods of misdirection or concealment.
And that program was called Street Smarts!
Streetwise represents a character's ability to navigate the streets and recognize warning signs versus opportunity that might exist there, or the ability to know just where to go to get what you need. So use this check when trying to find that specific merchant, to pick up subtle clues from locals' language and attitudes, or deal with a criminal or underworld elements and knowing how to approach them.
The wilderness must be explored! Go, go!
Survival is how well can you survive the wilderness, read the signs of nature, and overall wilderness competency. So if the character needs to find and identify safe food or water, reading signs for incoming weather, handling domesticated animals, tracking a creature or person, there's just a few things that survival encompasses.
But I'm always so vigilant.
And the last of the general skills is vigilance, which is like your passive perception. How aware are you of your surroundings when you're not trying to actively sense what's around you? This check is used for combat initiative / turn order when the player has not had time to prepare. So if it's a surprise attack or you haven't had time to really just mentally prepare for that combat. This can also be used for maybe picking up that there's a trap there without actively looking for it. Or maybe you overhear something from behind you, but you're not trying to, you just kind of pick up on what's around you. So if you want to have info for opposed skills in front of you, the books do have a table on these pages that you can check out. Each skill in the book also has examples of what to do if you have extra success, advantage, threat, and so on when interpreting your dice. Next up, we have combat skills. These are going to be more of a broad what each one is. We're going to get into more detail on damage and range and all that fun stuff when we get to chapter 6 of our beginner's guide series. The first 3 combat skills use your brawn characteristic, and those are going to be your brawl, melee, and lightsaber. Brawl is for your unarmed hand-to-hand combat. Maybe something like brass knuckles or shot gloves would also fall into this. Melee is going to be for swords, clubs, knives, pikes, or any sort of makeshift blunt weapon like a table leg. And then lightsaber is for when you're using a lightsaber. And then the other 3 combat skills use agility, and these are going to be your ranged light, ranged heavy, and gunnery skills, all of which can be used to blast that like button, thanks. So ranged light are one-handed ranged weapons like blaster pistols, ranged heavy is going to be two-handed ranged weapons like blaster rifles, and gunnery is going to be for manning anything larger than that, such as a mounted weapon or ship turret. And the last category of skills is your knowledge skills, and these all use intelligence. Again, these are for what you know and what you can gain insight about, not about what you do. Core worlds is how much you know about the core worlds of the galaxy, from culture to civilizations. If a player wants to identify where someone's from without asking, knowing the polite way to interact with them as opposed to what's offensive, or knowing what markets are best to buy or sell, or know which worlds define something illegal, then use this skill. Education is kind of the catch-all for knowledge. If it's not covered by another knowledge skill specifically, then you'd use education. Education also represents how well one is educated in subjects like math, basic science, and history. The skill can be used when knowing how to proceed with a government authority or to employ a basic scientific knowledge in an analysis. Lore is how well you know the legends and stories of the galaxy and the history associated with that. This is used when deciphering ancient pieces of writing or understand its context, or to know the exploits of an ancient hero or identifying an artifact that the players find. Outer Rim is going to work exactly the same way as the Core World skill, just for everywhere that's not a Core World. There's no skill for mid-rim planets, so the GM will need to decide if a mid-rim planet falls more on the core world or outer rim side of things. Underworld is how much a player knows about the underworld, which worlds nearby are the best for illegal activities, or knowing what are the best methods of committing a crime, or knowledge of local crime organization. Note, this is only the knowledge. To take actions on these knowledge would require a different skill, such as streetwise or skullduggery. Warfare covers the character's knowledge on conflict, both on the ground and in space, or the histories of conflict. This skill could come into play when the player wants to remember an old strategy used in a previous battle or war, or maybe the player wants to know maybe what weapon might be best for the situation. Xenology is how well the player knows a species or life form and their motivations, biological origins, and philosophies. This skill could be used if the player first encounters a member of an unfamiliar race and to identify how to interact with them socially, or knowing a species' vulnerabilities, or maybe know what environmental conditions or food a guest of another species would prefer. And that's all for the skills, but I still have my #1 secret to help your players treat the game like a role-playing game instead of a video game. Tabletop RPGs are a collaborative, story-driven role-playing game, not a single-player experience where your characters will, learn the best way to do a mechanics thing to make the game easier. And so my secret is this: players don't roll skills. You may be a little confused by that statement, so allow me to clarify. Just play the game without your skills in mind. So let's say you're behind enemy lines and a stormtrooper is starting to come your way and you need to hide. Instead of saying to your GM, I want the roll for stealth, tell your GM what you want to do. Instead say, I want to hide behind those crates, and then the GM can tell you to roll for stealth. Instead of necessarily taking actions based on the skills in front of you, just take actions like your character would do, and then let the GM worry about what skills you needed for what specific thing. And honestly, this might be me, but I would really only worry about skills before or after the session when you're spending XP to level them up. Every table and player is going to play differently, so you don't have to follow this advice, but this is what I have noticed personally helped me and my tables have a much better experience. If you guys have any questions about this video whatsoever, drop a comment down below. I do my best to answer every single person. If you want to go back and watch our full beginner's guide series, I'm going to leave a card up above. If you are new to the game or trying to learn the game or have players that are trying to learn the game, this is going to be a vital series, so be sure to share it with them. Thanks for being here today and watching the video. I will see you guys in the next one. But until then, and as always, may the force be with you.
Nobody's gonna go out with me.
Have you asked anybody yet?
No, but who would? I don't even have any good skills.
What do you mean?
You know, like nunchuck skills, bow hunting skills, computer hacking skills. Girls only want boyfriends who have great skills.